Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Maverick family. Big night tonight. State of the Union address. Will carry it live right here. And I was thinking you guys can participate, help out tonight. I'm thinking what we should do is when President Trump delivers his address, I think it's going to be riddled with half-truths and lies, exaggerations, which is his stock and trade. So I'm thinking you guys should help me with fact-checking tonight. We can do that through the chat. I might open the phone lines, and you can participate that way. This way, we can do it live together when he makes some statement and makes some claim about inflation or investment levels or how much money tariffs have brought in. You guys can fact check it using AI and or research, and we can do that together. So I think that might be actually fun, and we'll hold the politician in the White House accountable for statements made tonight during the State of the Union address. And boy, I'll tell you, is it a union anymore? Is it united? Is the United States united? What is the state of the union? I would argue the United States has rarely been so divided and more ununited, disunited, discombobulated, disconnected. You guys can share your comments in the chat. I will be looking forward to your assistance this evening, perhaps, as we wade our way through tonight's address. And we will show you as well how ununited the United States is very early on in the broadcast. Before we get into all of the other top news stories of the day, we'll highlight that for you in prep for the State of the Union address, which begins at 9 p.m. Eastern. Other stories we will touch on tonight include, well, we'll update what's going on in Mexico, I think. And we will also look at what's going on right here in Canada, because question period was held today. So activities in Ottawa back in full swing. I believe tomorrow they will be tabling the budget. That could spell trouble for the Carney Liberals. It isn't clear if the budget will pass. A minority government in place, they need the support of at least a few members of parliament from the other sides of the aisle. Without that, if the budget doesn't pass, it would trigger a confidence vote, and that would potentially bring the government down, forcing another election. Is that really what we want right now? Is that what you guys would want? Some people want that. But is it the best thing for the country right now? I guess we'll see. Maybe you want to comment on that in the chat as well. Or, if we open the phone lines, maybe you want to call in and express your views on that as well tonight too. So we have a couple of hours to spend together as we wade through today's top news stories. And then on the other side of that, we will go to live coverage direct from Washington, D.C. tonight for President Trump's State of the Union address. Stay with me. The excitement begins when we come back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Every night, well, every day, when the day begins, I think, I wonder if we'll have enough news to fill the broadcast tonight. Oh, we have enough news. More than enough news. Every night we have more than enough news. Tonight, no exception. The stories tonight, too, that are just coming to the surface, the subject matter, alarming in some cases. We're going to be talking about forced sterilization in a moment. All that coming out of Ottawa tonight as well. Plus, last night somebody sent me a message. This was related to the Tumbler Ridge mass school shooting out in British Columbia, asking why we allow private companies, private firms like OpenAI to handle our security. That was the question. That question arising, of course, because OpenAI was aware of Jesse Van Rootselaar's psychological condition, mental health issues there. There were some employees that wanted to report Van Rootselaar to authorities because they saw Van Rootselaar as a threat to public safety, but didn't do that for a variety of different reasons, which we'll touch on in a little while. So we're gonna get into that. And there's another story involving Pete Hegseth tonight and the Department of War in the United States that connects to this story as well. Isn't it amazing how these things always seem to intersect? A dot here, a dot there. The lines get drawn, the lines cross. These things are all related. So we'll explain that to you in a little while as well. And the forced sterilization story, there's a news conference that we're going to take you to. And I'm not really sure where that's going because I haven't fully researched it, but I'm eager to find out what they're going to be talking about there. The House of Commons back in full session today. Question period resumed. And before we get into that, I will highlight this out of Ottawa as well as the Prime Minister outside the House, well, in the building, but not in the chambers. He was asked some questions. Reporters that were scrumming MPs as they were scurrying by, as they do every day. The Prime Minister making reference here to the 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Here's Mark Carney.
Que la Russie n'accomplit rien. Rien de leurs objectifs militaires, stratégiques, et l'économie de la Russie devient de plus en plus faible. Alors, nous sommes là avec l'Ukraine, avec la coalition des volontaires, et on va être là aussi long que nécessaire. In English, there was a meeting this morning, very early this morning, of the Coalition of the Willing I participated in, including President Zelensky, chaired by President Macron, pardon me, and Prime Minister Starmer. Several things to take from that. First, as I said just at the end, Russia is failing. to achieve all of its objectives 4 years into this conflict, 12 years if you include its annexation, its illegal annexation of Crimea. But 4 years on, Russia is failing militarily, strategically, and economically. And we are in it for the long term. Canada and the coalition of the willing, and to that end, we will announce shortly, I'm going to announce now, I guess, that we are tightening sanctions, including on the Shadow Fleet, additional 100 vessels in Russia's Shadow Fleet. This is the fleet that effectively facilitates illegal exports of crude oil. So we're tightening that lifeblood from the Russian economy, along with our allies. Also additional financial sanctions, a lowering of the oil price cap in coordination with the EU and the United Kingdom. In addition, $2 billion of additional aid, military aid for Ukraine over the course of the next year. We're announcing that today. The Minister of National Defense will give details. And in addition to that, something Ukraine needs, which is 400 armored vehicles. We'll be supplying those in kind. I would note as well, I didn't mention this in French, but we are the third largest contributor to the Pearl air defense system that is coordinated by NATO. So Canada stands with Ukraine. The coalition of the willing stands with Ukraine. We're in it for the long haul. Russia is failing. The sooner they come to the table and actually participate in peace negotiations, the better it will be.
Minister, are you package for Cuba in terms of aid?
I have some things I need to say first. Today is a very important day.
I'm going to come back to Anita Anand. So she has something important she wants to say. We'll let her say it in a moment. I just want to highlight this. 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The money continues to flow, of course, from especially the EU now and Canada, NATO countries, not so much the United States, which has cut off the funding, but they're supplying the weapons, profiting as a result. Just as a matter of note, the thing is, Trump, as he is about to deliver his State of the Union address, don't forget that he has tried to position himself in the public view as the president of peace. And yet the world is more unstable than ever. We are closer to a nuclear war than ever before. The restructuring, this reset, this great reset that is clearly underway, has destabilized things in unprecedented ways. And it is leading to, I think, greater proliferation of nuclear weapons. So many countries now pursuing nuclear weapons. That's one of the main reasons we see right now this giant military buildup around Iran. It looks like we may and likely will become involved, or at least the United States will. Will other countries follow? Who knows? But they're going to be involved in some sort of very dangerous, maybe a protracted, who knows, but some sort of a conflict with Iran. It looks like the United States is getting ready to launch strikes there. Everything is in place. It's pretty clear Trump would like to avoid having that happen. We've seen comments from others in the administration saying they don't understand, and this is actually, I think, pretty close to a quote, still paraphrasing a bit. They don't understand why Iran hasn't capitulated yet. I'm certain that was a quote from just about 3 days ago. They thought they would just move these military assets into place and Iran would just roll over and give in, give Donald Trump whatever he wants. Iran is not Venezuela. Iran is not the same kind of country. Trump should know that. He's old enough. He's older than I am, and I'm sure he remembers the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. So he knows Iran will not respond in exactly the same way as a country like Venezuela, which is much weaker, was and continues to be much weaker than Iran. Not to say that Iran really would stand a chance against the U.S. military in a full-scale assault. It looks like that's likely where we are going. And that is because Iran continues to pursue the development and acquisition of nuclear weapons. But that is something that is now happening around the world because of this great reset that we are experiencing right now. These crazy people who are running our world, and that includes Donald Trump, seem to think that they're going to give us greater peace, or at least that's what they're promising. He says he wants to be the president of peace, and these foreign affairs policies, these approaches to dealing with even nuclear weapons and carving the world up into spheres of dominance, or at least influence, it's all aimed at reducing the risk of nuclear war. But I've been saying for a long time, it guarantees conflict. It guarantees war. Here's RT tonight highlighting this fact, this reality, this horrific reality. This is what they're saying, and I think there is some real truth to this. Talking about Ukraine possibly being set up with nuclear weapons, maybe by the EU. And here's this headline on RT says, Moscow will respond if NATO gives nukes to Nazi regime in Kyiv. Medvedev. That's the Russian rhetoric. That's the way they frame things. They're a bunch of Nazis over there. And I get that. There are Nazis everywhere, in every country to one degree or another, including in Russia, by the way. But the real thing we need to be concerned about here is this talk of nuclear weapons. Iran pursuing nuclear weapons, Russia concerned that Ukraine may get nuclear weapons, keeping in mind Ukraine had nuclear weapons on their soil, one of the largest stockpiles of nuclear weapons on the planet, because they were at one time an extension of the Soviet Union, and they had nukes inside Ukrainian territory. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, after the collapse of Soviet communism, those nuclear weapons were decommissioned in exchange for guarantees that the country would never be invaded. And that didn't quite work out. So now we're seeing this talk of possibly nuclear weapons coming into Ukraine again. I don't know how serious it is, but where there's smoke, there's sometimes fire, but it could just be Russian propaganda. That being said, I can tell you that even it's been out in the open. There's been talk about this. Even Canada, for the first time ever, actually talk about Canada maybe taking a look at maybe acquiring nuclear weapons. It blew my mind when I heard that for the first time just weeks ago. Remember when we did the program about preparing for a possible U.S. invasion of Canada? That they're actually wargaming this stuff out. They're wargaming this stuff out on both sides. Donald Trump, clearly serious about the annexation of Canada, the acquisition of our country to make it the 51st state. It's scaring people to the degree where there's some people actually talking about Canada acquiring nuclear weapons. And you know why? It's not because of Russia. It's because many people see the United States as an existential threat to Canada. Just in a couple of important side notes as we ready ourselves for President Trump's State of the Union address tonight, where I'm sure he will talk about all the wars he's ended, how he's the president of peace, and he continues to pursue a Nobel Peace Prize. Yet the truth is something quite different, as we've just shown you. conflict with Russia. Couldn't end it in 24 hours, like he said. Nor could Vladimir Putin conquer Russia in a matter of a week or so. 4 years later, today, the war rages on, and we are no closer to peace. Maybe even further away, as friction, conflict, maybe the war itself is in danger of spilling over into other countries and maybe even all the way around the world. That's reality, and that's very scary. So I highlight that for you. Let's go back now to Anita Anand, Foreign Affairs Minister for Canada, and let her finish up saying what she wanted to say.
It is 4 years since the illegal and unjustifiable Russian further invasion of Ukraine. Over the course of the last 4 years, Canada has stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Dans le court, le moyen, le long terme, nous sommes ici pour eux, pour leur souveraineté, for their territorial integrity, and for the international rules-based order that has kept us safe since the end of the Second World War. Canada has put on the table $23.5 billion in multiple forms of aid, military, financial, economic assistance, including in the energy sector. Today, I am announcing additional sanctions over and above the 4,000 sanctions against Russian individuals and entities that we have already levied. In particular, I am announcing 51 new sanctions against Russian individuals and entities, primarily targeted at the energy sector. In other words, in the middle of winter, Ukraine is suffering because of the extreme cold. It is for that reason that our sanctions are focusing, as they did with the oil cap, on ensuring that we're supporting Ukraine's energy sector and addressing Russian egregious behavior in this area. Donc, aujourd'hui, c'est un moment pour nous d'être ici encore, de souligner encore.
She will no doubt be asked about the situation in Mexico in a moment too.
Priorité,
I would think.
Sur l'indépendance et la souveraineté de l'Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. I can now take your questions. I will take them one at a time, and I will answer them all. But I can't answer questions when everyone is yelling at me.
Can you talk about whether or not you are preparing an aid package for Cuba?
We are, and I will have an announcement in the coming days.
What will that involve?
Well, when the announcement is made, you will see the particularities of it, but I do not have an announcement to provide to you today.
And do you believe the U.S.?
Any update on the situation in Mexico, the return of Canadians to Canada? Are you able to provide an update following your remarks?
Yes, I can. The situation in Mexico is becoming more stable. Flights have resumed. In other words, Canadian Airlines have announced as of last night and this morning that they are resuming some of their flights. In addition, the advice of local authorities continues to be of preeminent importance. As you know, the volatility and the instability differs throughout the country in different regions. For that reason, we are advising Canadians who remain in Mexico at this time to follow the advice of local authorities. In addition, we are also encouraging Canadians to register with our ROCA system. I indicated yesterday that the number of registrations had increased by 8,000 in the previous 24 hours. We are now at about 55,000 Canadians who have registered with the ROCA system. The long and the short of it is the situation is becoming more normalized. We should continue to see this trajectory unfolding. The situation needs to be closely monitored, as we are doing with our consular officials on the ground in Mexico, and we are advising Canadians to follow the advice of local authorities.
Sur le Mexique, par exemple, pour les Canadiens qui sont pris en ce moment, qu'est-ce que vous leur dites? Et pour les Canadiens qui préparent leurs vacances de la relâche, qu'est-ce que vous leur dites?
Bien sûr, la situation continue d'être fluide. En même temps, c'est nécessaire pour tout le monde dans le pays de suivre le conseil d'autorité locale. C'est important de se souvenir aussi que nous avons des gens ici, dans notre pays, qui veulent voyager au Mexique pendant les prochains jours. Donc, c'est nécessaire de suivre le conseil, pas seulement d'autorités locales, mais aussi ici, par nous. Nous continuons de souligner la situation et le conseil avec notre conseil chaque jour des affaires mondiales.
Sorry, we'll come back to
Et
English in
on
a
va
moment.
voir la continuation, j'espère, que plus stable.
Les Canadiens qui sont pris en ce moment, qui veulent revenir, qu'est-ce que le Canada peut faire?
And then here we go. One moment. Here we go. And go back
Les
to her.
entreprises aériennes. Et ce n'est pas possible pour moi de dire partout dans le pays, on peut retourner aujourd'hui. C'est une décision pour les individuels, pour les voyageurs.
Canadian arms and munitions going to the U.S. and then to Israel. Your own Crown Corporation has been raising this issue for a year, according to internal documents you've obtained. Is your government concerned? What are you doing about it?
Of course, we are concerned. I am making sure, as the previous minister announced in 2024, that no export permits are issued for arms to Israel from this country.
But what control do you have when they go to the U.S. first and then go to Israel?
In addition, the work that we are doing to ensure that there is a very rigorous export-import regime continues, that we are adhering to our international obligations, including trade agreements with our international allies, and to make sure that we are supporting a two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security is and has been a priority of this government. And I will reiterate that we have been at the forefront of that latter argument. We have also called repeatedly for Hamas to disarm, to lay down its weapons, and to play no role in the governance of Palestine. That is a priority for our government, and we are ensuring that on export permits, on the two-state solution, and on the disarmament of Palestine, we are playing a leading
export
role.
permits don't apply
And
to
finally,
shipments to the US.
we are at the forefront of humanitarian aid across the board, having put on the table $400 million in humanitarian aid for the people who are suffering in Palestine and in particular Gaza. So the work that we are doing across the board in the region continues, and as I said, we have a very strong export-import permit regime, one of the strongest in the world, where countries from around the world come and ask Canada for advice on the structuring of their export-import regime.
Are you adding more resources to
And
sanctions
in
enforcement?
particular, I will also reiterate that our current statute goes over and above the ATT, and we will continue to examine ways in which we can further strengthen our export-import regime. Thank you.
Are you adding more resources to sanctions enforcement? Because that's been a good concern in the past, that we sanction new people, but it doesn't actually go into force.
I really appreciate this question. It's a concern. We put in place sanctions. They need to be respected. And the team at Global Affairs is, of course, monitoring the adherence to the laws of the Government of Canada and the sanctions that we have in place. Also important is the work of the RCMP. They are responsible here for ensuring that the sanctions that we've implemented are adhered to, and so it is a dual effort, and certainly on enforcement, it is not the minister's role or ability or capacity to enforce, but I can implore those responsible for enforcement to ensure that there is compliance across the board with the laws of the Government of Canada, as well as with the sanctions, including the ones that we are implementing today, 51 new sanctions against Russian individuals and entities, particularly in the energy sector, as Ukraine is really focusing on the 4-year mark since the illegal and unjustifiable war by Russia began.
En français, rapidement sur Cuba, pourquoi c'est important pour le gouvernement du Canada d'annoncer de l'aide pour Cuba?
Pourquoi?
Oui.
Okay. So Anita Anand walking on eggshells there, especially with the question put to her about Cuba. Canada in a very delicate situation, as are all countries that might want to bring humanitarian aid to Cuba right now. That's because the United States, under Donald Trump, the Trump administration, blockading Cuba, preventing shipments of really anything at all from going in or out. Oil, the key issue there, they were getting their oil from Venezuela. Now the United States controls all the oil in Venezuela. The oil supply to Cuba has been cut off. Energy is, to say the least, in short supply there. They have an energy crisis on their hands in Venezuela. They don't have refinery capacity that would make them self-sufficient in any way. As a result, garbage is piling up in the streets. Sanitation has become a serious issue. It's a health concern at this point. They're potentially going to have some real serious problems with food very soon. Nothing's going in, nothing's going out. We see people in long lineups outside stores, even at facilities where they have ATMs where they're trying to withdraw money. Donald Trump has said there's no money even that will be allowed to go in or out of the country. He's trying to choke the country off. I know there are some negotiations going on in the background. They clearly want some sort of regime change in Cuba. They want to bring the government down. Cuba, a thorn in the side of the United States since 1959 and the Cuban Revolution, which continues to this day. I don't know if it's fair to say Cuba is a failing nation tonight because of communism. It's clearly failing because it has been isolated, choked off from the rest of the world. It's an island. The country not able to send anything, send anything in or send anything out. So there are shortages of all kinds of essentials. Countries that normally would supply Cuba with, will the United States, will Donald Trump specifically allow humanitarian aid to flow from Canada to Cuba? I'm going to take a little break, come right back on the other side while I check the feed, see what's going on. Hang on. I will return right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Canada, kind of being backed into a corner. I know there's been pressure put to the government of Canada to provide some sort of aid to Cuba. We'll see what happens. Anand says something's going to happen, but I don't think it will be oil. Trump's pretty determined, and so is Marco Rubio, to cut Cuba off. Did you take note of what she was saying about arms to Israel? My guess is a lot of people not familiar with what the Canadian position is on that. Are you guys aware? Did you know what the position Canada had taken some time ago on weapons to Israel? I'm just looking in the chat. If you have any comments on that, put them in there, because Canada no longer sends any kind of arms. We're not supposed to be sending arms to Israel. Canada cut the arms shipment some time ago. I don't think Canadians are even aware, quite frankly. Canada also paying a price diplomatically there because of that position, supporting a two-state solution, not supporting the Trump administration in their support of Israel. Canada saying, no, we're not sending any weapons. Canada does provide other forms of aid to, I think, both sides, but I know no more weapons, just not participating in that at all. But now there's been, I guess, there's some sort of shenanigans going on where some weapons in the Canadian system are being diverted down to the United States or something. I'm not really familiar with that story, but the point is Canada's position has been no more weapons to Israel. And yet, even after Canada adopted that position and put that into practice, the government's still coming under fire from social media live streamers, especially on the conservative side, who have been very critical of Canada and assuming that Canada's position mirrors that of the United States, and that is not the case at all. It's a very, very different position. There's a certain friend of mine, ours, of the channels, who lives up in Toronto, who doesn't call me anymore, says I'm a communist these days. He's still my friend. I don't know if he wants me to be his, but he's taken a hardline position, and I'm certain he probably doesn't. I don't think he knows that that's what Canada's position is, and I think he would be surprised and enlightened if he opened his eyes just a little bit. He might also find that my political views are not what he accuses me of being. That being said, I'm not afraid of Cuba. I'm not afraid of communists. I don't want to put them on a list or put them into a concentration camp or anything of the sort. I think we should all be making a greater effort to get along these days. I wish we could, instead of talking about acquiring nuclear weapons so we can protect ourselves from our best friend. Strange times. Then Anand also talking about the situation in Mexico, where violence continues, I think, even tonight. Mexico remains on high alert this evening following the dramatic killing of one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords, known as El Mencho, leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. The other night, too, I pronounced Jalisco a couple of different ways. Indeed, you can pronounce that, or people do pronounce it. Shouldn't say you can, but people do pronounce it in a variety of ways. Depends on accent, depends on where people live in what part of Mexico, or whether you're an Anglophone from Southern Ontario in Canada. Some people say Jalisco, other people say Jalisco. I hear Jalisco, which I've pronounced it as the other night. And then when Angie was on the program, she said it's Jalisco, which I think is actually more correct. When I, long time ago, was taking Spanish lessons in college, the instructor used to laugh, but enjoyed our Canadian Mexican accents. I can't, you don't realize how much you butcher a language, or the way, the pronunciations. There's just no way to even understand. But she used to laugh. She said it was beautiful, but she laughed. There's the shoe on the other foot, right? When you're talking about prejudice and bigotry and the way people view each other. There I was in a class butchering Spanish, and still to this day, sitting in this chair, still butchering Spanish. I hope I haven't offended too many Spanish-speaking people, too many Mexicans. Doing my best. In any event, Mexican military forces, which were aided by U.S. intelligence, conducted that high-risk operation in Tapalpa, Jalisco State, Sunday. They shot El Mencho, wounded at first in this fierce shootout. They tried to capture him, but he died shortly after being airlifted to Mexico City. At least 8 CJNG members were killed in that initial raid. I know that right now the death toll, where is it sitting tonight? Last night, I don't have a current update on the total number of people dead, but we were up over 78 as of last night. So we have reports confirmed of over 250 incidents of burned out vehicles used to block highways, along with torched buses, convenience stores, gas stations, businesses. Clashes with security forces have been intense. Excuse me. Mexican officials are reporting at least, here's the information here, at least 70 deaths. So far, I know we were up to 78 last night. I think things have calmed down somewhat in the country, but still seeing some acts of violence. There were about 25 members of the National Guard, at least, killed in ambushes and firefights. Dozens more have been arrested, dozens of suspects in major cities like Guadalajara. Residents described scenes of chaos, charred debris lining roads, smoke rising from barricades, and streets eerily quiet as people sheltered in place. Schools canceled classes in several states. Airports continue to face disruptions. International travel warnings remain in effect. The U.S. Embassy and other governments have urged citizens to avoid non-essential travel and stay indoors where unrest occurred. President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed the nation in her daily briefing, emphasizing that peace, security, and normalcy are returning in many areas. And we have seen Mexican forces taking control in a number of videos. She praised the rapid deployment of thousands of troops to restore order and counter the cartel's show of force. Officials insist the government's aggressive stance against organized crime will continue amid ongoing pressure from the United States, including recent threats of intervention to dismantle the cartels fueling the fentanyl crisis. Experts warn the real danger may lie ahead. With El Mencho gone, the CJNG, a highly decentralized and brutal organization, could face internal power struggles among its commanders, potentially sparking more turf wars. This echoes the deadly infighting that has plagued the rival Sinaloa cartel since key leaders were removed. But for now, calm appears to be returning slowly in some of the hardest hit regions. But the threat of further violence is still there tonight. Mexican authorities continue to monitor for any escalation. The military presence remains heavy in cartel strongholds. So we're keeping an eye on this situation. Somebody sent me a video just before we went live here tonight, talking about the Mexican situation being something of a psyop. I have taken note of that myself. And it's not like a conspiracy when it's right in your face, when you see what's kind of going on. But even as some live streamers, some influencers have highlighted what appears to be something of a psyop in Mexico, I think there's still another layer to it all. A layer that maybe even those highlighting the fact that there's a psyop element to this are not aware. You know, I just draw your attention to this. Don't you think that it's kind of strange or highly coincidental, maybe a little too coincidental, to see all of these live streamers all in the same place at the same time, again, conveniently positioned at just the right time to provide live coverage of all the burned out cars, the chaos, the mayhem, to bring that all to us live in the comfort of our own homes through the Matrix. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but it seems a little bit too coincidental to be a coincidence. What's the old saying in politics? There's no such thing as a coincidence. And this is highly political. The thing is, we're seeing that these kinds of operations come together because of sophisticated technology and psychological warfare techniques. In some cases, I would say the influencers probably are down there because they're paid. And some of these influencers do, I mean, they are paid because they're part of a political machine. In other instances, I think even this is the thing, even some of the influencers who realize there's a psyop going on still remain blissfully ignorant to the apparent truth that they're part of it, even if they don't realize it. Not realizing that they themselves have probably been manipulated so that they are being placed in certain places at certain times so that they can be used. How would they do something like that, Rick? Well, let me tell you, there are a variety of things that are done to manipulate people, to get people into position, especially if you're an influencer. If you say the right things, you're fed like Pavlov's dog, right? They'll feed you donations through your super chat. You say this, oh, keep saying that. We like that. Here's a donation. Here's a donation. So they'll feed you that way. They can also micro-target even the influencers. They'll influence the influencers by micro-targeting them with messaging, planting suggestions. It's sometimes just as simple as placing an advertisement in front of someone. Look at the great deal you can get on a trip to Mexico right now. These are the dates when you can get the best price. And down they go. It could be something as straightforward as having someone make a call, make an offer. They can go that way. There are just a variety of ways they can move assets into position in order to get people to do their bidding. And when I say they, it's not some shadowy, mysterious cabal. It's intelligence services acting on behalf of governments with virtually unlimited funding and the most sophisticated technology and psychological warfare methods ever developed by mankind. It's extremely powerful. You can get people to do all kinds of things. Oh, come on, Rick, that's crazy. No, it's not. Advertising manipulates people. Everybody, we're all being manipulated on one level or another all the time through branding, exposure, repeated exposure to ads, micro-targeting you, feeding you messages to get you to buy a particular brand of toothpaste, soap, or ketchup. And if you think that you're not being manipulated and pushed into positions or to go here at a certain time, of course you are. We all are. If there's an event, all you have to do is advertise it. People might show up. It's as simple as that. If you want someone to go to Mexico, there are a lot of things you can do to kind of pull them down, create a magnet to get people to come, and you can coordinate things to get them all to come at the same time. And if you know that something is going to happen, like, oh, I don't know, a drug cartel war, because you're the one coordinating all of that, then you can get all your assets into place so that your information warfare campaign can be ramped up. And in some cases, as I say, these guys are moved into position on purpose, and they're fully aware of what's going on because they've been told, they've been paid their assets. And in other cases, some of the others follow along because they're just in pursuit of clicks, views. But as I sit here, I was sitting here for the last few days watching all of this stuff happen in Mexico, and I'm like, why is that? Isn't it weird that social media influencer is there, and that guy's there, and that guy's there, and these are the same people who are at this one, and that one, and that one, and this one? They could go on a sunny vacation in a lot of different countries, but they all chose Mexico, and I'm seeing the majority of them down in Puerto Vallarta. All at the same time. Just saying. It's a little bit weird, but you can kind of see what's going on if you really stand back and take a look at the aerial view of these things. They want you seeing the chaos. Why would they want that? Because there's a certain guy who wants to apply pressure to the Mexican government. And you think you don't matter. You think your votes don't matter. Of course your votes matter. You vote all the time. You vote with your dollars. You vote with your actions. You vote when you decide where you're going to go on vacation, if at all. Like, who's going to go to the FIFA World Cup now after seeing all the burned out cars? Gee, I wonder if Trump being mocked with that fake peace prize, the FIFA peace prize, maybe that just pissed him off enough that he decided to just shake things up in Mexico just a little bit. No, he wouldn't do that, would he? He's not that petty. I don't know. Could be a factor, though. Again, just saying. But I think there's a larger game being played here. We're all sort of being manipulated. We're all being pushed around on the chessboard. And you and I, we're just little pawns. But you start to see how the game is played. The danger as an influencer is that if you can be half awake and have one eye open, and it's taking me, I'm still on a journey trying to open both of my eyes. But I'm realizing that the real danger when you're an influencer or a journalist, especially if you're a journalist, is that if you become aware of how things are being manipulated through the information ecosystem. But if you're not awake to the fact that you yourself might be one of the assets being manipulated, you yourself can become a liability to the public, an actual danger. Because the information you start to share is not fully informed. So I'm going to do my best to keep it real for you here, folks. Even though I'm talking about things that right now might be just warping your mind a little bit. Don't go away, though. More mind-warping news on the other side of this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay. Should we get into the Tumbler Ridge stuff? We have, we won't. I'm going to save that for a moment. Again, as we just await President Trump's arrival for the State of the Union address, which begins in 59 minutes in Washington. 59 minutes. State of the Union. What is the State of the Union? Is the United States unified? I would argue very ununified. No, not unified at all tonight. Dangerous. A country potentially even on the brink of a civil war, so say some. I don't think that's all that far from the truth. Tonight, we're seeing that some Democrats are boycotting the State of the Union altogether. That's not unification. That's not unity in a United States of America. Let me just see if I've got this. So we have, for instance, the number 2 House Democrat, one of, I think, about a dozen Democrats not going to attend the State of the Union. House Minority Whip Catherine Clark saying she will not attend President Donald Trump's State of the Union address tonight. She is the highest ranking House Democrat.